Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna go over another USACO silver video. This is from December 2017, called the Bovine Shuffle. So basically, I'm gonna summarize the problem. We're gonna have n cows, okay, and we're gonna be given like a shuffling order. And so let me show you what that looks like. So what we have to do is, so let's say we have 4 cows here. I'm gonna call just that. So these are like positions the cows are at 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're gonna have a shuffling order, right? Like that. And what we have to do is, okay, let me just do one shuffle to see how it looks like. So at the end, it's basically gonna look like comma. This part is blank. So we're gonna use the shuffling order and move around the cows. And what the question wants us to find is how many of the positions, like 1, 2, 3, 4, how many of those positions will be occupied no matter how many shuffles we do. So here we have 3 positions that are occupied and 1 position that is empty, which means the answer is 3, right? So that's what we have to figure out, and we can use cycles to answer this question. So what I mean is that if you look at 2, it's always in the same position. It's because it refers to itself. It says the cow at index 2 will go to index 2, so it's never going to go anywhere else. So we always know 2 is going to be occupied, and it's going to be occupied by 2. And when we look at 1 and 3 here, these two things, they basically refer to each other if you think about it. 3 refers to 1 and 1 refers to 3. So after like a couple of shuffles, they'll be back in their original state. So we can see they're in like a cycle, which means each position in the cycle is always going to be occupied, right, by any of the elements in the cycle. So we know that if we have a cycle, the length of the cycle, that's how many positions they're got to be occupied, and we're just going to add up all such cycles, and that would be our answer. And here, if you can see, 4 is not a cycle. It goes to 3, but it never comes back to 4. So that's an example of something that basically just like, never part of a cycle, and we won't count those, values in our final answer. Keeping that in mind, let me show you my code. Okay, here we go. So bunch of import statements, static stuff, and input, and here is where the actual algorithm starts. We're gonna say if not visited basically keeps track of whether we have already covered it in a particular element in another cycle. So we don't want to like double count, you know what I mean? Like we don't want to count the cycle length for each of the elements of the cycle. So just visited basically avoids that. And if not visited, which is obvious for the first element, we're going to just cycle, which is a separate helper method. So we have an index that keeps track of the current index we are at, okay? And the temp tells us how many elements there are in the particular cycle. And I'll let you know what error means in just a minute. So while true, we're gonna first make sure we set the visited of that particular index to true, because we obviously have visited it and we don't want to come back to it again. And we're gonna let me skip over this statement and int. So the next index is basically going to be a of the int, so the next element in the cycle. And we're going to increment the count or the length of the cycle. Okay, now to get here, this is what breaks the cycle. Okay, so if we are already visited a particular element, that means we have either reached the end of the cycle, or you can also call the start, because if you think about it, the cycle doesn't have a start and an end, but we set the starting point or the end point. So if we have already visited that, so we're gonna see if the starting index and the current index are the same thing. When you're good to go, you have a good cycle and you can break. Okay, right here. otherwise. But however, we're going to check if it's not equal. That's where this part comes into play. We have an error list that's fresh every time we call cycle, and it's going to add all the indexes we loop through. And since this means we don't have a cycle, right? Because the starting index and finishing index are not the same. That means it's not a cycle. So we have to set all the listed indexes to false, so that maybe in another cycle it could be used again, right? So then that's why we have this for loop. We're going to go through the whole error and basically set everything to false. And at the end, we add count, and we also have to make sure the temp is 0, because that's not a cycle and we don't want to add wrong numbers. So we only add temp if it's obviously if it's actual cycle which has a length. That's why I said temp equals 0 here. So that's it, and then the count we're going to out.println and close. So yeah, thank you for watching. See you next time.